My name is Carlton Cartwright. I'm the Executive Director for Veterans Memorial and Multicultural Histories Incorporated. Today is Sunday, June 5th, 2022, and we are here doing an interview in Brandon, Florida. Miss, what is your name?
Kimberly Marshall.
Okay, Kimberly. And what branch of the service were you in?
United States Air Force.
And by the way, my assistant cinematographer is Jeffrey Salazar. Okay, and Ms. Marshall, when is your birthday?
September 12th, 1976.
Okay, where were you born?
I was actually born in Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. And what year did you go in the military?
November of 1995.
You said you went in the Air Force, right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. All right. What city do you live in right now?
Lithia, Florida.
Mm-hmm. All right. And why did you choose the Air Force?
It was the branch that I felt as though I can get a great education, because that was one of the reasons why I came in. And the way the Air Force structured education was kind of the mindset I wanted to go after.
Mm-hmm. I take it you were in Chicago when you decided to join the military?
No, sir. I was actually living in Miramar, Florida. My parents had moved from Chicago to Florida when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through grade school, high school in Miramar, and so I joined out of Miramar, Florida.
Oh, okay. Would you go down to Miami and then they flew you to
That's
Texas?
correct. Yes, sir. I went through Miami MEPS, and then from there I went to Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay. All right.
Kind of changed my world.
Well, I bet it did. I want you to tell us a little bit about it. So, what were you thinking being a woman going into the military? What year was that?
Went in 1995, and I wasn't thinking in the sense of a woman being in the military. I was thinking of, I need a change of pace. I need an exit strategy from the home life. And what better way to at least do, the plan was 4 years, get my education and keep it moving. Obviously, that was not the case. But it was really because I needed to get away from home life, and what better way to try to do that but going to the military, because I was not able to go to college.
Why not?
I wanted to become an actual architecture, and school is expensive. And instead of having to go into school debt, financial aid debt and whatnot, I decided that I'll just go to the military, get my education through there, and then hopefully become an architect.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of the route I took instead.
So what happened when you got to Lackland?
When I got to Lackland, the first thing is what did I do? But as I kind of figured out what was the purpose of basic training and what I needed to come out with, I really kind of stuck my nose to the ground and kind of did what I had to do. I was that quiet girl back in the back of the flight that just did what she needed to do to get through those 6 weeks of basic training.
So apparently you managed.
I did. I managed very well.
Tell me, mentally and physically, one each. What one thing, I don't know how many you had to process, but tell me one thing that you processed that got you through mentally, and one thing that you physically push yourself to do to get through the physical part.
Mentally, definitely, when I sat there and thought about it, and I said, if I go home, what's there? What's really there?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I going to go from there? And so, for me, it was there was no choice. I had to push through mentally. It is what it is. I think that's where I kind of started learning how to compartmentalize my life. And I said, so we're going to push through and we're going to grind. Physically, interesting enough, just pushing myself and not paying attention to the pain. I ended up pulling a groin muscle while I was there. So it was getting washed back or pushing through mentally and physically and just kind of sucking it up. As my TI used to say, Tech Sergeant Bear, I'll never forget her. She was like, suck it up and press on. And so that's what I did physically, ignored the pain and got through it. But really it was the mental part of it that pushed me both physically and mentally, just because what's to go back to if I go back home.
I take it that you wound up in the hospital with the groin injury?
I went to the clinic. You know,
Uh-huh.
they had a clinic downstairs. This is what it is. I said, great, let's wrap it up and keep it moving. So it was one of those things. They gave you a choice. You can go to the hospital and do this. That's going to keep you here longer. Or you just suck it up and press on and get through your 6 weeks. And I said, let's suck it up and keep pressing on. I don't want to be here any longer than I have to be.
Did they give you anything for the pain?
Yeah, the Motrin, 800 milligrams of Motrin. You know, so you took those.
Was that the non-drug of the day?
That is the non-drug. It probably still is. You know, you graduate from Motrin, you go up to naproxen. But that was basically it. You know, they kind of gave you a choice at that time, and again, I didn't want to go back home,
Right.
so I just kind of pressed through it.
So 6 weeks
6 weeks.
and basic training. I mean, tech school. What was your MOS?
So my first MOS was a armament specialist, armament system specialist, a 2W1, and that school was in Shepherd Air Force Base, Texas.
Okay. And how long was that training?
It was about 4 months. My school was 4 months because I was on F-16s. That was my airframe. And
Oh,
so
okay.
that was my aircraft.
16 weeks, huh?
Yes, sir.
Besides your injury, anybody else get injured
No, sir.
in your flight?
No, sir.
No? Okay. What about in MOS, your tech school?
No, we all kind of stayed together and graduated together. No one
Nice.
got injured.
How long was that? 16 weeks.
16 weeks.
So where was your first duty station?
Luke Air Force Base, Arizona.
Uh-oh. Sounds familiar.
Very familiar,
Okay.
yeah.
So how long was your tour there?
I was there for 3 years.
Uh-huh.
There as a 2W1 armament specialist working on F-16s.
Right. Did you meet anybody there?
Sure did. I met my husband.
Okay.
We were assigned to the same squadron, lived in the same dorms.
All right.
So seeing each other in the dorms and passing, and then at squadron events, we would see each other. And so over time, you tend to start talking to each other.
Right.
So.
Okay. So what was your job there?
So I was a 2W1 armament system specialist,
Right.
working on the F-16s.
Mhm.
I primarily worked in back shop where all the gun systems came in, all the equipment that held all the bombs and munitions came in, and we maintained them and fixed them. And every once in a while, we would have to go out to the flight line and deal with issues that were on the aircraft themselves.
Okay. Anything ever go wrong?
We did lose 6 aircraft while we were there.
Wow.
They would take off, and immediately, going into the air, they would the engine was shut out, and then they would crash, somewhere right outside the base. So for we were averaging probably 1 F-16 a month. We were losing a bird. So that was probably one of the biggest things that happened while I was there. 24-hour ops. My part of the job, because the only way to get an engine out of an F-16 is where we had to remove all the gun systems.
Oh.
And so in order for the engine mechanics to do their job, we had to go out there and remove 300 plus gun systems out of those jets. So
your MOS played an integral part in repairing
That's correct, sir.
that issue, huh?
that's correct. So for 2 weeks straight, we're pulling out gun systems, and then wait for the engines to come back in. And as the engines came back in and they were, inspected, repaired, and put back into the jets, then we had to go back in and put the gun systems back into the aircraft.
Okay. Okay. Anybody get hurt during that challenge?
No, sir. It was actually pretty good ops. The thing, what I would say is that we all came together as a family.
Uh-huh.
We knew we all had to work 24-hour ops. We knew we had stress on us trying to get the job done, because at the end of the day, it's the safety of the pilots.
Right.
So knowing that, we kind of took care of each other, made sure everyone was good, and no one got seriously injured, and make sure we managed the safety guidelines.
Okay. So how long were you in Arizona?
So for 3 years.
3 years? What was your next duty base?
So after that, we went to Little Rock Air Force Base.
Uh-huh.
But prior to going to Little Rock, I made a decision to retrain into a different MOS. So en route to Little Rock, I went to a school went to another technical school. It was for information management.
Oh.
That was a 3 Alpha 0X1, where we specialized in managing information, records, publications, and then on the other side of it, we maintained the computers from the wall out. So anything that went wrong with software, the computer hard drives, or any hardware, we were responsible for getting it, keeping it moving, and making sure they
I was
were
going to
correct.
say computer science.
Pretty much, sir.
Uh-huh. All right. From basic training to, you said you wound up in Arkansas?
That's correct, sir.
Any incidences of discrimination?
At Little Rock, it was, living in that area was, you
And
get-
I mean, excuse me, racially or as a female?
So at Luke, I was in a flight of 110 people,
Right.
military service members, and out of the 110, there was only 2 or 3 females.
Right.
And so the difficulty is, I knew coming into a male-dominant maintenance career field that I had to prove that I fit.
Right.
And so, it was easy for the men to say, I'll carry your toolbox, or I'll do this for you, and kind of push you aside. But I had to come in with a different mentality, and that really came from my TI, Sergeant Bear, where she was a maintenance troop herself. And she drilled that into us, is that, you're going to go with your maintenance, and you're going to be in a male-dominant career field. You have to show what you're capable of. If not, then you won't have the respect that you deserve as a maintainer, let alone a woman, but a maintainer. And so that was kind of the attitude I went in, because it was easy for a man to come in, a male, service member, say, I'll carry your toolbox, or I'll handle this piece of equipment. And I had to come in with a different attitude and say, no, I got this. Because I didn't want to be pushed aside, because it was easy for them to do that. But what I found was I became a very highly respected, not just as a woman, but as a maintenance technician.
Wow, okay. So, military job. What about Arkansas? Any incidences in Arkansas?
No, because then I went from being a maintainer to going to an office job.
Uh-huh.
And so you're surrounded by, a diversity of whether it's men or women. And so I didn't really experience any of that in that environment. I was pretty lucky to have women leaderships that were senior NCOs in that, and so they were able to show me what it was to be a woman in the service and to work amongst other men. So I had great role models at that point moving forward.
And what about civilian life in Arkansas? What was that like?
We stayed pretty close to the base, because outside of Arkansas, you dealt with some racism. Being a Hispanic female, that can be pretty tough, especially when you had children that were, biracial in itself, Hispanic and then black. So being around in Arkansas, we stayed close to the base, just because, we didn't want to get into a predicament that we may not be able to handle. But when we got to Little Rock, we got our briefing. Where not to go, there's certain aspects that were happening around Little Rock itself.
Okay. And how long were you there?
2 years.
Okay. What was your next duty base?
Went to Lackland Air Force Base, where I was assigned to Wilford Hall for about 2 years.
In what capacity?
I was an information manager, again, dealing with records and publications, and also computer support technician.
Uh-huh.
And I did that on the medical group side.
Okay.
Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay.
Going back to Lackland Air Force Base.
Okay. Going back? Oh, after Arkansas, you went back there?
Yes, sir. I got assigned to the medical group.
Right.
Being as an information manager.
Uh-huh.
Again, maintaining records and publications, and then being that computer support technician.
Right. Okay. So, up to this point, by the way, did you have any problems staying in touch with your family?
No,
Back home?
no. I mean, I made phone calls on a regular basis if I needed to. But no, I didn't have any issues maintaining contact.
How many years did you do altogether in the military?
22 and a half years.
What year did you get out?
2018.
Okay. So, so you're married.
I'm married. I have one son, and I'm pregnant with our second son.
Okay.
And our second son happens to be born about the graduation time frame that my husband graduates from being a military training instructor school.
Oh, okay.
So he gets his hat right when our second son is born, and so our son was born in Wilford Hall when Wilford Hall was a hospital.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay. So, when you went back to Lackland, how long were you there this time?
So I was at Lackland for 2 years,
Mhm.
and then they call it command leveling, where they ask for volunteers to go to Randolph Air Force Base. they were creating a new unit at Randolph, and they needed folks within my MOS to go and assist to stand it up and start working and creating this new unit. So I got sent to Randolph Air Force Base for my last 2 years in the San Antonio area.
Okay, all right. What was so you lived in San Antonio? Did you live on or off base?
Off base.
What was the economy like? What were the people like?
They were great. The thing about San Antonio is that it's a big city, but you still have that small town feel. Mm-hmm. And we purchased our first house in San Antonio. So being in San Antonio, we live close to Lackland because of my husband's job. So I commuted back and forth to Randolph. But the economy was great. The people were great. Again, very family, military oriented because of the 2 large bases that were there. So we explored San Antonio more than we probably explored any of our previous bases.
Okay. So it was like you were saying, it was a family atmosphere?
Very family atmosphere, very.
Nice.
Things to do. And we enjoyed ourselves as much as we could, with our responsibilities and being in uniform in San Antonio.
Cool. What was your next duty base?
So we went to Scott Air Force Base after San Antonio area.
Uh-huh. Scott. What was Scott like? What'd you do there?
So again, same MOS as an information manager. I started off in teaching, computer support technician. I became an instructor over there. I did that for 2 years, teaching other individuals how to maintain computers and troubleshooting, things of that nature. And then as my time at Scott, I got deployed to Afghanistan, and then was deployed for about 9 months, embedded with the Army. And that's kind of where I got my first taste of being in a joint environment and kind of really finding my own footing, kind of my own home within a joint environment.
How did you do that? How did you manage that?
It kind of came with with an open eyes and really understanding that we all bring something together, mm-hmm. and having an open mind of what we all bring to the fight. Because exactly that's where I was at. I was actually in a forward operating base away from a central location where everyone kind of deployed to in Afghanistan, and so I had to learn that we all brought something to the fight because it was just us. It was myself, Air Force, Army, and some Navy. So we were all that we had, and so I had to really come in with that mind of we each individually as service members, but also too as being in an Air Force or different branches, we all bring something different to the fight.
Did you experience any discrimination while you were in the Middle East?
No, I mean, because it was just a small forward operating base of U.S. military. We did have some NATO forces there or European forces, but they were open arms, right? Because I think everyone had that same mentality that we're in this fight together, and if something were to happen, that we had to rely on each other to get through that situation or that incident. So I did not. We all looked at each other as one, really.
Did you witness any casualties coming back from the front lines?
One of my responsibilities there was to make sure communication security, crypto was loaded on all the Humvees. We had a force that came in and they were getting deployed outside a forward operating base I was at. I was in a Mazar-e Sharif. And so we sent forces out, and then we had a KIA from that group of folks that went out to do a mission. So we had to, bring that person back, and did a memorial service for them, and then pack up their stuff, and then send him home to his family. That was one incident. Another incident was an individual I worked with on a regular basis committed suicide.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry to hear that. Okay, so how long were you there in Afghanistan?
9 months.
Did you get to travel? No, I mean, like, didn't you get R&R?
In the Air Force did not, because we weren't there for a full year.
Uh-huh.
So we went in, we did our time. We were only supposed to be there for 6 months, but our backfills were not able to get through training on time, and so we got extended an extra 3 months. Mm-hmm. So just because of all those logistic issues that were happening, we did not get to have the R&R. So I did a full 9 months in Afghanistan.
Okay. Okay. So after Afghanistan, you went back to,
Scott Air Force Base.
and how long were you there this time?
For another 2 years, so I did a total of 4 years at Scott Air Force Base.
So you were doing the same job?
So I got changed to a different job. I ended up going eventually to the office of the commander for Air Mobility Command. So I worked for the commander's office while I was there.
While you were in Afghanistan, by the way, did you have any issue staying in touch with your family?
There was times where, we called it blackout, and that was one of my responsibilities being in Afghanistan as the communications person.
Right.
If something were to happen, I had to pull essentially everything to where communications did not go out or come in unless it was directly to the commander. So there was instances where I had to do what was called blackout, and I couldn't talk to my family for a couple of days. That was stressful for me because I know that was stress on him. But there was a couple instances on those two instances I mentioned earlier, and some other times where we were dealing with some issues outside the wire where we just had to pull comms.
Gotcha.
When you're in Afghanistan, being a woman in the military, and seeing women in Afghanistan, how was that sort of environment? Just generally speaking.
So one of our missions where I was at was to train other Afghanis there on how to do their job, whether it was supply or whatever the case is, communications or whatnot. And there was times I went to the other side, to the Afghanistan sides, to do that. And for them to see a woman, it was probably a novelty, because I've never seen a woman in uniform, but a woman of rank, because at that time I was a technical sergeant, P6. And so they never saw, and especially a woman that had authority of some sort. So it was very awkward for me because, we're used to be having, you have so many feet apart from each other and have that comfortable personal zone. And they didn't understand that. So it became very uncomfortable for me because they didn't know how to deal with the woman in uniform with authority. So an incident had happened where they crowded me pretty quickly. My back was against the wall. And so it became very concerning of how I would get myself out of that situation. So when that happened, I was pulled out immediately by my battle buddies, and they were taking me back to the U.S. side. My rules of engagements were changed a little bit, again being a woman over there, but it became very uncomfortable because they just didn't know what that was like to have a woman in uniform there.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. So you went back to, again.
Scott Air Force Base.
Right. Okay. And that's in Arizona.
That's in Illinois.
Illinois. Oh, you went back. Okay. How far is that from Chicago?
It was about 4 hours.
Okay.
So during that time, I did go to see my family. I still have family in Chicago. There was times we would meet them halfway in a little town called Seneca, which is 2 hours. But I did get to go back to home, per se, and visit family and take my kids back to Chicago and show them kind of where I grew up.
Where were your children while you were in Afghanistan? With your husband?
They were with Dad.
Okay.
Dad kind of took the helm and, was doing the full-time dad and service member.
Where was he stationed at? In Illinois?
Yes, sir. He was also in Illinois at Scott Air Force Base.
Right. Okay. All right. Kids miss you while you were going?
Yeah, it was actually kind of cool because my oldest son, his class did a little book for me, and they all did like a letter and some pictures in a book, and they sent that to me for the holidays, so it was kind of touching. And then when our comms was actually pretty good, I was able to talk to them on video chat. But it was a little different for them to see Mom gone
right.
For a lengthy period of time, and so it was. I think for me it was difficult being away from my kids for that long.
I understand. So where did you go after Scott?
After Scott, we went to Spangdahlem Air Base, Germany.
The whole family?
The whole family, my husband and our 2 sons.
And how long was that tour?
3 years.
Okay, and what was your job there?
Information manager. Also, I worked at a group level where we were responsible for different munition squadrons throughout Europe.
Right.
And then after doing that for about a year, I then got sent up to work for the commander's office for the air base.
Okay. In Spangdahlem?
At Spangdahlem.
Uh-huh. And you were there, you said 2 years?
3 years.
3 years. Did you get to see any of Europe?
Wow, we traveled. I took advantage of that. I remember going when we got our assignment in Germany. I made a checklist of all the places I want to go. I was over there, and we almost made all of them except for Rome. We had plans to go to Rome, but Operation Odyssey Dawn had kicked off, and so that was one place on the list we did not manage to able to make.
So where'd you go?
We went to Amsterdam. We went to Han. in Amsterdam. We went to Paris, Venice, Verona, and then different parts within Germany itself. So we were able to do those different sites.
What about Spain?
Yes, Mallorca, Spain. We did. We took the kids down there for spring break, and that was actually really, really cool.
Did you get up to Berlin?
We did not.
Uh,
We did not.
but you did. You said you got to. Did you get to anywhere else in Italy?
So we only got to those two places. We had planned on going to Rome. We had hotel booked and everything. Ended up canceling it because we were then involved in Operation Odyssey Dawn, the entire air base, and that's where I really felt the community of the military. With 24 operations going, my husband and I both being military, him being a maintainer, me working for the commander. We literally worked off shifts where we were high-fiving each other on the road, him coming to work and me coming home and vice versa.
Right.
But that was really a test of community as families really came together to take care of our kids when we were working off shifts of each other.
What about Greece and England?
We made it to London.
Okay.
That's probably one of my, outside of Mallorca, that's probably one of my other favorite places that we visited.
Okay, but not Greece.
Didn't make it to Greece.
Okie doke. All right. Okay. So how long was the tour in Spangdahlem?
3 years.
And after that, where'd you go?
Then we came here to MacDill Air Force Base.
Okay. And what year was that?
2012.
2012. And what was your job now?
So now, I'm still in the same MOS as an information manager, but now I'm assigned to the U.S. Special Operations Command, where I worked in the Intelligence Directorate for a little bit, helping with the Intel, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance, which is our manned and unmanned aircraft. I was there for about a year, and then I got moved up to work in the office of the Commander's office, so I worked directly for the U.S. Special Operations commander.
Okay.
Do you feel that there are more opportunities for women in Intel now versus when you started, let's just say, boot camp person?
I see more women in it now. I do. I didn't really work a lot in the intelligence career field. It's just where I came into the U.S. SOCOM in that unit. You see about a 50-50 diversity now, not just amongst women, but also with minorities. What I've experienced in being in, that was my very first legitimate or actual considered joint command. There is so much diversity there. Really what came down to it is, what do you have to bring to the fight? Can you contribute what we need you to contribute? And outside of that, it didn't matter. That's what they relied on is what do you bring, and if you can, bring it. Especially now, especially with everything that was happening in the SECCOM, AOR, and all the intelligence that was coming through SOCOM.
Okay. Okay, so where are we at now?
MacDill Air Force Base.
Okay, so MacDill is where you separated finally.
I retired out of MacDill.
Okay, and how did everything go for the last part of your military career?
So my last 6 years of my career, I was joint. I started at U.S. SOCOM, as I stated earlier, working for the commander. That really gave me a different insight of the high levels of what goes into decision making for the war effort, how we treat our people in the sense of what we give them, how we take care of them. And then after SOCOM, I ended up going over to CENTCOM, Central Command, again working for the commander over there, working along with him and really seeing how things were handled in that AOR, and really getting to see all those different countries and really seeing the cultures and how they played a part in how we dealt with the war front.
Did you use your GI Bill while you were in the military?
I did use my GI Bill. I got my bachelor's degree
In
information systems,
Okay.
and then armament systems.
Okay. Masters?
I started trying to get my master's. After I retired, I went back to school using the GI Bill. About 50% done, and then I kind of put a pause on that, but 50% done on my master's degree.
Okay. All right. Well, you're still young, there's still time. So anyway, what did you do after the service?
I went straight to work. I
Doing
took
what?
about 60, I went back into working over on base as a contractor, working in personnel and managing some personnel programs. After that, I moved on, and now I'm a human resource director for a federal contracting company.
Okay, that's what you're doing now.
That is correct.
Okay. What were your feelings about separating? Were you really ready to separate, or?
At the time, I thought I was. For my last 2 years working for the CENTCOM commander, I traveled on a monthly basis. So I was always exhausted, and I knew at the time when I wanted to retire, I was just tired, just physically and mentally tired. I had injuries. I've had like 2 shoulder surgeries at the time. I had knee issues. And so medically, my body was probably screaming at me also.
Right.
So at the time, I was ready. At least that's what I was telling myself. And I retired, took my time off, slept a lot, did a whole lot of nothing. And then that's when the transition really hit me. And I think that was probably the most difficult for me, was transitioning, or having to transition. And I was not able to put that uniform back on.
Okay. While you were in the service, you feel like you had all the supplies that you needed to do your job?
Not all the time.
No?
We had to improvise in how we get things done. We had to learn how to streamline a lot of things to when we didn't have stuff. And then we had to really rely on technology to get us from point A to point B.
So you feel like there was often situations where you were under a lot of stress?
Very much so.
Uh-huh. Okay. How'd you handle that?
I probably handle it, I internalized it a lot, and then I just kind of just grinded until I just kind of got the answer that I needed and wouldn't let go. I knew I had a commander that said, once I bit onto something, I just wouldn't let go until I figured out an answer for it. And then a lot of times I would just go to the gym and work out those stressors where I could. But I learned how to compartmentalize my life really quite a bit, to where I just put things away and just kind of pressed on.
Okay. Any place you traveled that you haven't mentioned so far? I don't care whether it was on vacation or R&R.
I traveled a lot my last 2 years.
I mean, civilian or military.
No, I did. I've been to Egypt. I've been to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. I have been to Oman. I have probably been to every country in the AOR except for 3 countries. I haven't gone into Syria, Kazakhstan, and there was one other one that Yemen. But I've been into every other country that is under the CENTCOM AOR. And I think that was probably one of the things I took most out of that assignment, outside being part of a joint environment and learning a lot of things. But it was really able to see the cultures and how they all interacted with each other. So a lot of traveling.
Have you ever been to Asia?
I have not. I know my husband has, and he talks highly of it. But that's one place I have not been able to go to.
What about around the United States, besides the places that you've already mentioned?
I've traveled to D.C., I've traveled to New Mexico, we've been to Illinois was one of the other places, Missouri, New York. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Georgia.
Medals and citations.
I have 2 Defense Meritorious Service Medals. I have 2 Air Force Meritorious Service Medals, 2 Joint Service Medals, 1 Army Achievement, I believe 3 Air Force Commendations, and I believe 2 Air Force Achievement Medals.
Hold on to any close friends after the military?
I do, still to this day.
How many?
Probably
Approximately.
about 5 or 6.
Okay.
I really still hold close and talk to on a regular basis.
Nice, nice. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war, about the military in general?
It has. I think being at a strategic level for so long, I really understand what many people may not understand that's on the news, just because we're able to see the hierarchy of things, how they come down and how the decisions are made. So what I hear on the news is not necessarily what I take it for what it is, because I know there's a lot more that's behind the scenes that comes out of it. So that's kind of, I tell people, you don't always get the full scope of things. You got to keep an open mind and truly understand that there's more than just the decision that was made.
How did your service and experiences affect your life?
I would say that being in the military saved my life. Coming out of a home front that I came out of, not having many choices, it saved my life to where there's so much more I want to give.
Okay. What do you have to say? So we know you, of course, you've already spoken about your family, but what advice do you have, or what is your worldview after everything that because you've accumulated, going through the military, it's obvious that you've accumulated a lot of experience. And when you do that, and you get to travel halfway around the world, your worldview is going to be different than, you know, people that live here and don't get out in the country. You
Right.
follow? So, what is your advice in today's in the present day world, so to speak, to not only your children, grandchildren, no, your family, in other words, but also the future leaders?
And for future women leaders as well.
I would say overall, we're more the same than we are different. We can put all the things that all the things that we think we know about people, and when we're more the same. We just got to put our biases aside, and we can get a lot more done than what we think. And I've seen it myself firsthand amongst going to those other countries and see how we can come together and make things happen. And keep an open mind in the fact that we all have different experiences, we come from different backgrounds. There's a reason why our military is diverse, because we all have something to bring to the table. And keep that diversity in the forefront of your mind. But more importantly, we are more the same than we are different. And I tell my son that now. We have a younger son who's currently serving in the Air Force. And I tell him that you've got to keep an open mind, because not everyone was raised like you, not everyone was given the experiences that you have, and you got to understand that we all bring something to the table. So keep an open mind, because there's a lot more we can get done together than we are separate.
Is there anything that you'd like to cover or add that you have not so far that you can think of?
It's been a blessing wearing the uniform. It really has. I see where I've come from, where I've gotten to, and I just hope that people who put the uniform on and decide to serve in their own right, whether it's through the spouses that serve, because they serve also through the individuals that put the uniform on, that they see it as a blessing also, because we all grow some way, one form or another. Giving back to our country is a huge honor, and it really is, because not everyone gets to do it, because we're a small population of society that gets to put that uniform on.
I want to thank you for a wonderful interview. I also want to thank you for your service to this country.